Hello everyone, my name is Sydnee and I am a homicide and violent crimes advocate here at Access Assault Care Center. And today I'm here to talk to you a little bit about our homicide and violent crimes department. Our homicide and violent crimes department here at Access is new as of 2016, and we cover Boone, Story, and Marshall counties. So here's a little bit about the advocacy that we provide for our crime victims, which includes counselors for death notification and support after a homicide. If a family was notified of a death by homicide, we can provide counselors and support after that notification. We also man a 24-hour crisis line manned by all Access team members, in which that number is provided there. We also provide information and referrals for different types of services, such as Iowa Vine, Iowa Crime and Trauma Scene Cleaners, Safe at Home, and the Crime Victim Compensation Program. I'm also going to tell you a little bit about these programs that we provide referrals for. So Iowa Vine is Iowa Victim Information and Notification Service, and this allows victims to receive notification about a defendant's status of release from jail or prison, transfer, escape, or ultimately their death. We also provide referrals to the Iowa Crime and Trauma Scene Cleaners, and that is if a violent crime has occurred in a victim's home, this agency will clean up the crime scene, and they specialize in homicide, suicide, unattended, and accidental death decontamination. We provide referral to an organization called Safe at Home, which helps survivors of a variety of crimes, including stalking and violent crimes, to keep their address and other personal information off public records so offenders are unaware of where they are located. Keeps them safe at home. And the last referral that I wanted to talk to you folks about today is the Crime Victim Compensation Program. This Crime Victim Compensation Program has a wide array of services that they provide, and they allow victims of homicide and violent crimes to apply for perpetrator-paid funds to cover costs associated with the crime, like hospital bills, lost wages, travel expenses, therapy, and much more. And I will also refer to them a couple more times throughout this presentation on what they provide funds for as well. Just like this next one, the Crime Victim Compensation Program provides funds for funeral arrangements, and we also provide assistance with funeral arrangements as well. And we help our victims apply for that Crime Victim Compensation Program and restitution if they'd like. They don't have to apply. It's just those perpetrator paid funds if they are needing money for different types of services after they go through this crime. We also provide advocacy to support victims through the criminal justice system. The criminal justice system can be very confusing if the person has no experience with it, which is why we can provide support through that. We can explain everything that's going on in the process that's happening and what will happen next. We also provide accompaniment to law enforcement or county attorney meetings and court proceedings, because again, this can be very confusing, and it can also have the victim relive their crime over again, and we just want to be there to support them through that. We also provide general emotional support as well for any victim or family members of victims that need that emotional support. Family and individual counseling is also something that we advocate for our victims. And the Crime Victim Compensation Program also provides funds for counseling as well. We assist victims in finding housing and or transportation. And again, the Crime Victim Compensation Program can provide funds towards emergency relocation if a family or a victim needs it, if they feel as if they are not safe. And we can also provide information on victims' rights, because again, that legal system can be very confusing, and we want to be there to help throughout the entire process. Here is a list of all the crimes that we cover. We cover murder in first and second degree, attempted murder first and second degree, robbery, extortion, burglary first and second degree, arson first degree, kidnapping, felony assaults including willful injury, intimidation with a weapon, etc., homicide and serious injury by vehicle, and hate crimes. So this is the current list of crimes that we are focusing on right now in our Homicide and Violent Crime Department, which this is a list of violence or threat of violence crimes versus paper crimes, theft, including theft, fraud, OWI, and forgery. And mainly the ones that we are covering are felonies over misdemeanors, but we can work with victims of misdemeanor crimes because these felonies usually get higher sentences or worse sentences than misdemeanor crimes, that's what we focus on more. Because we are new as of 2016, we have a smaller department, so that's what we are working with right now. And we hope to foresee victims contacting us directly once the Homicide and Violent Crime Department is more publicized than it is now. But right now we are referred by the legal system and or the prosecutors in the case. We generally do not take domestic violence or sexual assault crimes or suicides because those are handled by our domestic violence or sexual assault teams, which we can team up with the domestic violence or sexual assault teams if it's a part of a homicide. If there was domestic violence prior to this homicide, we can team up with the domestic violence or the sexual assault team as well. And then the last thing that I wanted to cover with the types of crimes is some difference between types of crimes. So there is a difference between burglary and robbery. Most people do not know the difference between burglary and robbery, so that's why I wanted to cover that today. So burglary is different from robbery because burglary covers the aspect of breaking and entering into a building or a car such as that. And a burglary in first and second degree is when another person is present in that building or car that someone is breaking and entering in, or that they are breaking and entering with a weapon or a bomb. I also wanted to cover the difference between arson first degree and arson second degree. So we cover arson first degree, which is the death of a firefighter or one or more persons anticipated to be in or near the property. Rather, we don't cover arson second degree because that is damage exceeding $500 in value. So I wanted to cover a little bit about our homicide victims for homicide and violent crimes and the difference between a primary victim and a secondary victim in both of these cases. So for a homicide victim, the primary victim is going to be that murder victim, and the secondary victim is going to be the immediate and extended family of that murder victim. And so for homicide victims, we can provide advocacy for medical expenses through the Crime Victim Compensation Program, through prosecution, or through both of those. We can cover advocacy through funeral expenses, which again, funeral directors are usually aware of the Crime Victim Compensation Program, but we can also help them apply for that as well. We can help victims seek out restitution for property damage for their estate if there's property damage during the crime. And also, we also provide counseling, support for criminal justice proceedings, Crime Victim Compensation Program funds, and more for secondary victims as well, that immediate and extended family. And violent crimes, the primary victim is going to differ on the type of crime. It can be multiple people, it could be family members, it could be roommates, it could be landlords, it could even be strangers. And the secondary victim is going to be the immediate family of those primary victims or just a victim. I wanted to cover the definition of grief and its well-known stages today. So grief is activated through death, which can create central emotions and thoughts. And the stages of grief, which has been produced by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And a lot of talk goes around these stages of grief, and most people believe that you start at denial and you end in acceptance and you go through all of the stages. When in reality, there's no order to the stages of grief. You can go through one of them, you can go through all of them, you can bounce around to different ones, you can go back to one, you can go through them at different times than most people go through them. It is all a process for grieving, and that's okay. So denial is the feeling as though this is not happening or there's no way this could have happened. Anger is having anger towards the perpetrator or even the world about why is this happening to me or why is this happening to my family. Bargaining is trying to trade with the world to have a crime reversed, such as in a homicide, someone could say, bring them back and take me, Or violent crime could be, I'll be a better person if you reverse this crime. Depression is the activation of sadness and worthlessness. And lastly, acceptance is accepting what has happened will not change and seeking peace within oneself. So the last thing that I wanted to cover today with you folks is some myths and facts surrounding homicide and violent crimes. So we just talked about grieving a little bit, and there is a big myth surrounding grieving, and that is a short process. When, like I said, grieving is unique, and it's different for each and every person. Each and every person can go through it differently, and they should be allowed to grieve at their own pace. And they can go through those stages at different rates than other people, and especially other people in their family. That's okay. Another myth surrounding homicide and violent crimes is that the crimes are easily forgotten by their victims, when in reality, crime victims live with the crime for the rest of their life. If they report the crime, they have to go through the legal system and go through the sentencing, the charging, the trial, if it goes to trial, and everything like that, which can be adding on to the toll of their crime, of that crime that they went through. Another myth is that homicide and violent crime victims can't have PTSD, and PTSD can be very common in survivors of violent crime or homicides. There can be triggers associated with these crimes, as in if a robbery was done in a dark alleyway at night, a victim could have a trigger of the dark. They could, when they're in the dark, they could have a trigger and take them back to the crime in that night. And it can be very triggering and cause PTSD for those victims. The last myth that I wanted to cover today was that victims should not talk about what has happened to them. When survivors often want support from family, friends, and others after a crime, because those crimes can be very difficult to go through, and it's okay if they want support, and it's okay if they don't want support. Again, it is unique for everyone, and the process is unique for everyone, and that's okay. Well, thank you for listening to me today. I really appreciate it. I hope you folks have a great day. I did want to go back to this number again and say that we do man a 24-hour crisis line for sexual assault, domestic violence, or homicide and violent crime. That number is open there. And my name is Sydnee Rule, and I am the Homicide and Violent Crime Intern for Access Assault Care Center. Thank you, and have a great day.